What's going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you the Lineup Builder Show with our partners, Sabersim. We got Jordan in here. Jordan, what is going on, my man?
Not a whole lot, getting to that time of the year for NBA here where I think we get some chaos unfolding. It feels like pretty much every single night. Got some teams taking, rotations get a little weird, teams making the playoff push. So always kind of a fun time of the year for the NBA streets. Baseball right around the corner, too. I keep thinking about baseball coming up real quick on us. So excited for that as well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, chaos is a great way to describe it. And actually, I know before the show we talked about doing today's slate first, but since you brought up the word chaos, let's go back to yesterday's slate. Yeah. I just want to go. I probably should have screen shared, where I was at, but I'll walk you through it. It was a really interesting slate. Do this for me real quick.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the other slate. So I was really high on the first game. Mm-hmm. So just try this. Just try like bumping up like the total number, like playing like an over script, like we do. We got when the news hit with KD. So like I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but he rolled his ankle really bad in warmups. I mean, they said he tripped over someone or whatever, but he clearly rolled his ankle. Looked really bad. Run a cash build real quick. I'll just walk through. I was really high in the first game. I really liked Kyle Kuzma. I really liked Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. So I was really high on those pieces. From the Mavericks game, I was really high on Christian Wood. And then really I had other pieces later. And so this kind of helped me. I had I liked Jamal Murray. I liked that game, and that game actually ended up being kind of crappy. And what happened though, late swap saved me. I was always like, I thought OKC, I thought it was just going to be a chaotic situation. Like I did not want to play Josh Giddey. We were talking about that on the Up to Lock show. I did not want to play Lou Dort. I did not want to play who was the other? Aaron Wiggins. Chalk Aaron Wiggins as value. So like my plan already, and this was what was crazy. So this is how the slate actually, okay. So I wonder if I bet Saber right now. So the original cash builds yesterday, you would have seen 4 or 5 pieces from OKC. That was kind of the chalk build.
Yeah.
Plus like a Tatum or a few spin up options. So this probably has KD.
It does.
Being out,
so
right?
This is is like at the final projections. Yeah. So this is the cash build basically of how it would have looked at the end of the night with our adjustments to that first game there.
Okay. So go back to, so I already had, so this was awesome. And I think we had maybe 10 minutes to make this adjustment. So I typed into chat. So bring up the OKC game and the Suns game. So I readjusted because, if you've been following me, I mean, Jordan, I love making a lot of different, manual adjustments to mine. And so when this happened, I reset my setting, or no, I didn't fully reset my settings, but in there you can see where the adjusted Sabersim new projection is at. The 49.7 on him right now, is that the projected with KD out?
Yep, that's with KD out, yeah.
So, I even bumped him up a little bit higher. I bumped up Ayton and I bumped up Chris Paul. And then the key was Terrence Ross. Go down to Terrence Ross for the Suns, because with KD out. So here's where I just was. I wanted to get aggressive, and we had limited time, and I'm like, I want him to pop over some of these OKC values, because I thought he was a very similar play to like Trey Mann coming off the bench or, whatever. And so I gave him like a 23 projection. And then on the other side, so take away the Suns. Then the great thing is I already had, like, I was already under on Giddey. I was already under on, like, I moved Giddey to like 35. I moved, I X'd Dort out because I just didn't want to play him. I moved Isaiah Joe down to like 20. I moved I X'd out Jalen Williams, and then I under projected Aaron Wiggins as well. And this was crazy. I got 7th in the $15 100K to first. If Pirtle gets 9 more points, chipping that thing. So I was really kicking myself. It was a really good night for me. And a lot of it was just due to late swap. And, and how smooth it was insane. Like you had like 6-7 minutes once things were going. And then, I uploaded the lineups and we were good to go. But all right, so go down. So I just want to see, like, in hindsight, if any of the builds that I hit. So I already had Waters bumped up. I gave him like a 20-point projection. I had Trey Mann bumped up. I gave him like a 20.5. And then Dang, I had him a little over 22. So like what I was trying to do is I was trying to embrace the chaos.
Yeah.
Is OKC. And I'm just like, screw these chalk guys. I'm like, I don't want to mess with them. And we talked all through, me and Kay Fallick on the Up to Lock show went kind of back and forth on this. I understood where he was at, and his logic made a lot of sense. My thing is, I can't stand OKC and what they do. So I was just like, what's like the craziest thing I could think of? Okay, let's just invert this. Like, let's just, the starters under project them, and then the backup dudes over project them. So that's what I did, and I just reran it, and it was just crazy how smooth it was. So, like, if you rerun this, it's pretty much the same, except for you get the late swap function in bright yellow, and you run it, but it looks just like this.
Oh, yeah, let me show that real quick.
That was pretty similar to what my settings were, too. I was using so I've been doing the $4 20 max, and then what I've been doing also is just putting those 20 into the 15. And my kind of goal has been, I want to a true sweat in the $15 only by using 20 lineups has kind of been my goal. And we're there. We're not even a week into doing this kind of personal challenge on my own. And last night we had that first sweat. A lot of it was due to late swap. And so one thing that I've really added into my process now is one thing you talk about all the time, just rerunning after each lock, rerunning the numbers just to see if anything changes. It's important. Some of the builds that you'll see and some of the new builds that you'll capture, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think late swap is obviously a huge part of NBA all year, but especially at this point in the season. I think people underestimate how big of an impact it can be, even just a slight shift to a starting lineup where maybe a guy's getting 2 or 3 extra minutes on the court in the projections. That changes things dramatically, right? I mean, if you're talking about a guy that is fantasy point per minute producer out there, you're giving him a 2 to 3 projection bump. That's going to make an impact, and capturing that as the night goes on, as each game locks, I think is great, especially with how easy Sabersim makes it. You might as well, you have to come in and check to see if you got guys that are out anyway. You might as well be hitting the late swap button and just refreshing everything one time before the starts of games. So yeah, and I love the idea of embracing the variance with some of these tanking teams too, or even just teams with a lot of value, right? Like, all projection models are going to assume that the minutes are more certain than they actually are in terms of what things are going to look like that night. And when you start looking at ownership too, I think it makes a ton of sense. We got kind of an interesting situation similar to tonight, not on a tanking team, but if you're ready, I think maybe a good time to take a look at tonight's slate here.
Let's do it. I mean, so like in hindsight, one other comment I got to make, and this is sometimes painful, but when I start my day, I always like to review. I like to go back and review, and I like to sort by actual score within the pool that I was looking or that I was using, just to see, hey, did I have any builds that would have shipped? I had 3 builds in my pool of all right. So in my pool of 417 lineups, obviously I was only running 20, so it would have been tough to capture these ones, but I had 3 lineups that would have shipped, that would have hit 328, 323, and 321. So that's always nice to see. It just, kind of confirms that the process, the process feels good. Things are right. So,
well, and I think, go ahead.
Yeah. And it was just a lot of that included, like, one of the builds had Lindy Waters and Terrence Ross. And, you're talking 0.3% owned and 0.5% owned. So just crazy. But, it's such an awesome tool. More people need to utilize it. And, once you start doing it and once you've had some success, it just becomes even more easier.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I hear from people that get kind of frustrated when they see that the winning lineup was in their pool and they just didn't play it. I actually think that's a great sign, right? That should be a really positive indicator that you're on the right track. You had the right angle for that particular slate. at that point, it's really like a bankroll management question of, hey, make sure you're managing things correctly, getting yourself enough slates in play and shots on goal so that one of those times that lineup's going to land in there for you, rather than it being like a bad thing of like, oh, why didn't I get this lineup? So yeah, you were probably very, very close if there were 3 shippers in your pool.
Yeah, the other thing too that I'll say, if you're doing kind of what I'm doing, you have to, if you're running 20 lineups in that, so you're competing against people that are running 150, you have to adjust your strategy to kind of align with that. That means taking more risk, and that's what I've been doing, like having a really concentrated pool, really taking some stands on some low-owned plays, and you got to be comfortable with just, I might have nights where you return nothing, but that's why, I mean, it's different. Like if you're playing 150 and you don't have the bankroll to support, maxing out the $15 every night, it's going to be a lot more painful. But if you're doing 20 max, so 20 into the 15, and you're $300 into that, if that's not going to put a big dent in your bankroll, it's easier to take those risks. So what's great about looking at this, I haven't looked at the slate at all yet tonight. So how about we do what we always do? Let's run this cash build. Let's see what the optimals are looking like early.
Yeah, let's do it. I have a hunch. I took a quick look at some of the projections and how the slate was looking before we got started. I've got a bit of a hunch on what we're going to see here. Will be an interesting situation, I think, to exploit a little bit tonight as well. So while this is building here, so I ran that. I had used 001 settings. It's essentially a cash build, very close to cash, just builds a little bit faster for the show here. But the goal of this, right, the reason we do this at the start of every stream is to just get an idea. What does the slate look like, right? What are the optimals that people that are building their lineups, they're sitting down to start researching? What is everybody going to get tonight, right? And this is going to give us an idea of what the best plays are, maybe what some of the pivots are here as well. So kind of as I expected here, doing a little bit before, Nets and Grizzlies tonight, right? Ja Morant still out. A lot of guys out for the Nets. I know Dinwiddie was out here, and then jamming in some other like top plays here. Giannis showing up a lot just because there's so much value here on the slate tonight. Let's look here at the first 100 optimals and just see what we're getting. I'll sort this by projected score as well, just so we make sure we're really looking at that.
Nets full on punting this game. So just to answer Robert's question, I mean, that actually Durant going out really made my night, if anything. And yesterday my birthday, so obviously having some birthday drinks, and I just full on trusted Saber, and I didn't review any of the lineups and after until like it was locked because the time was crunched. But that just goes to show, like, you got to put value on. Like I personally need to put more value on waiting for news. I don't do that enough. Like sometimes I get sucked into these early games where I'm like, I know the situation. Like I know who is in and playing. When you gotta, there has to be a value put on. Like if we don't have news yet later on in the slate, there's a value to that, because if that news hits differently than everyone's assuming, you're going to get some nice leverage plays. And obviously yesterday was like a crazy scenario because KD was going to play, and it was just a freak accident, I think, warming up. But back to tonight's slate. So we got the Nets punting. They still have, so this will be interesting because you got Cam Thomas. I think this just seems like a spot where they let Cam Thomas like do his thing, and so he would be someone and you got, all right, so they're not full punting. They got Mikal Bridges, Cam Thomas. I'd be very nervous to play like someone like Mikal and Dorian Finney-Smith. It seems like a spot where you let Edmund Sumner get more run. Patty Mills I wouldn't play, but it would be like Day'Ron Sharpe, Edmund Sumner, Cam Thomas. And then honestly, I mean, this is another spot where you really want to wait for the starting lineup. The starting lineup is going to tell you a lot about what kind of the Nets' plans are in this game. I mean, like if Mikal Bridges didn't start, we know they're full punting, So yeah, that's going to be, really, really interesting. I think so in that cash build, were we getting any Houston players?
Let's see. Yeah. So let me see here. I know we were getting a little Jalen Green. Okay, yeah. So a little Tate, a little bit of Green, some Terry Eason here. So yeah, a little bit of Houston popping there as well. A lot of value on tonight's slate. It seems like there's quite a few different teams here that we can go at.
Yeah, let's go back to this home screen and so Tyus, the price has been adjusted up. I still think, I mean, he kind of tilted people against the Lakers, but he's still going to be a phenomenal play. I will say, like Desmond Bane, Desmond Bane against the Warriors. I mean, here's the thing about the Grizzlies. The Warriors on the road have been terrible. Like, they've been so bad on the road. It's insane. A team of their caliber, the resume, everything. Like, the guy, Draymond, Clay, you got Curry back. Like, how bad they've been. I don't understand it. But this game's going to be interesting because Draymond and Dillon Brooks have been chirping back and forth. I mean, it's been hilarious. Have you been following that, Jordan?
Yeah, I have. I think.
Who do you think's winning so far?
I don't know. Dillon Brooks kind of drives me nuts a little bit. I mean, I'm not the biggest Draymond fan either.
I'm with you.
But Dillon Brooks just drives me crazy. I watched the Nuggets Grizzlies game the other night here, where some of the Dillon Brooks picked up his like 16th tech or whatever it was. So he just drives me crazy. Was kind of glad to see my Nuggets take the win there in that game. So I don't know. I don't love either of these guys, but I think Draymond's kind of got the edge here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get Draymond motivated, I'm going to have a little bit more interest in him. And obviously, this game, they got circled. I mean, Draymond's been chirping. And if he's chirping, you got to think these guys are going to come to play. So my rule, though, I don't know if I can take the Warriors on the road. They've just been terrible. But this is going to be a game that I think everyone should be watching. But I think, all right, so a couple things right off the bat. The Rockets, so these first two games, I mean, this Rockets-Pacers game should be really interesting. The pace is going to be really nice. Tari Eason, I mean, that price tag, 5'6", is sky high, but he is a guy that can produce. I guess Jalen Green and Tari Eason are somewhat interesting, but I don't love this Rockets rotation right now. So they would be a team that outside of maybe two names, I would under project. Like if Knicks flat 3K, if he starts, I don't think I would have interest in him. I think I would prioritize some of the Nets value or some of the Grizzlies value over a guy like him. I do have interest though in Halliburton on the other side. We can play opposing point guards against the Rockets. That's been a spot that's been really nice.
Yeah, and I think getting to this point in the season too, you mentioned it. We really need those starting lineups for these teams, right? It becomes really hard. You're talking about a tanking Rockets team here. Kevin Porter Jr. still out here. You need that starting lineup. You need to have some sense of what the rotation is going to look like here. I think I become more interested in these teams if we get late starting lineups that are a little bit different than expected. Right. I basically just want things to shuffle up. I want those minutes to readjust. I want the field to not adjust correctly here. And then I become interested in the guys that become a little over projected here or a little higher projected when that starting lineup comes out, and less so on the guys that were expected to start here. And I think we got a couple teams like that tonight, right? We got the Rockets. I think probably some certainty with the Grizzlies lineup. I think we'll probably know about what that's going to look like, but you never know. And the Nets too, as well, right? You mentioned it before. I think the Nets are a really interesting situation here tonight, especially Cam Thomas, right? I think that the field, including even like the Sabersim projections, are going to assume that he is going to get a lot of run and get a lot of usage here. Talking about taking risks, right? I mean, what has been going on with his minutes this season, right? I kind of been all over the place. It seemed like he was like going to just go off after the trade originally take place, and then they get the other guys back on the other side of the deal, and he just completely falls out of the rotation. Like, I don't know if he said something at practice or what, but I don't know if I'm as confident that he's going to play 30 minutes tonight, even with all these guys out.
So this is the spots where it's like when you're in it and you get a good feel on these teams and what they're doing, where you can gain an edge, where maybe like projections can't see those things. Here's kind of what's going on with Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas he's a walking bucket. The dude can score with the best of them. but he doesn't play good team basketball. I mean, when he gets the ball in his hands, he's firing. He's, firing. And then, he's kind of a defensive liability too. So when the Nets won 3 games in a row, they got some big wins, the one over the Boston. They found that like key rotation in there, sticking with their main guys now, and then rotating in Dorian Finney-Smith, and then also Royce O'Neal, Cam Johnson, who obviously is a starter, but they kept a pretty tight rotation. And then you'd see a little bit of Joe Harris. Cam Thomas, I think, was getting like 6 to 7 minutes. But this is a spot now where they're clearly resting some guys, maybe punting this game against a tough, Bucks team. This is definitely a spot where you just say, hey, maybe we can go out and get a win. We can steal a win by just playing, putting Cam Thomas out there. Maybe he's going to go out and put up 40 like he did before, right after the trade, when Kyrie was gone, when KD was gone. I think that could be a very similar situation, but we need to know what the starting lineup is going to be, for sure. So, but I kind of agree with the projections that I'm seeing. If you bring up the Nets, like Day'Ron Sharpe, Edmund Sumner, we talked about him. Like this is like I would be very, very nervous to play like Seth Curry, Patty Mills, some of these guys like Nerlens Noel. We're not like I'd be very nervous to play those guys. Those would be the guys that I would under project. Even like Dorian Finney-Smith and Mikal Bridges, I'd be nervous to play them too. I want to play the script that we saw post-trade, where it was literally Edmund Sumner, Cam Thomas, and then Day'Ron Sharpe had a few good games too. So that's where I would be looking at right now with the Nets. Now, maybe if we get a, coach speak or, a starting lineup that is different than what we're expecting, maybe my thoughts change. But I feel pretty confident that they're going to kind of punt this game and let Cam Thomas run the show.
Yeah, I think another interesting situation to monitor here is on the other side. We've got a 12-point spread already. The Bucks are at home, 2 games up on the Celtics now. We've got Giannis with a probable tag here. I think at this point in the season, you always got to treat that with a little bit of a grain of salt here. I wouldn't be surprised to see that like a late questionable downgrade later this afternoon here for him. And then something to monitor. This game's at 6 o'clock my time, an hour after the slate locks. Just something to keep an eye out for. I'm not saying that I think he's going to end up getting out or anything, but the kind of stuff is this is the time of the year where that's going to happen. And I could see this being a game where it happens too as well.
We've seen Coach Bud do this too. Like the other team punts, he's fine doing that. You could run out Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. You could run out Bobby Portis, Javon Carter, Lopez, Grayson Allen, and Pat Kahn. And I think they get a win over this Nets team without a lot of their guys. So that is a good point. That is something to monitor. My thing though too is if we're playing the script where it's like the Nets, punt, they let Cam Thomas run the show, I'm probably under on Giannis and some of the like Middleton, Giannis, Drew. I'm definitely under on that side of the game, or that the Bucks side. There's so much risk. I mean, you got a 12-point spread. The game could be over at halftime. I mean, who knows? But those are some of the things that I would do. And then the game that I think is interesting is the one that we're going to watch. There's a couple interesting games. Knicks against Kings should, 239.5 total. If Brunson should,
I think he got upgraded to questionable here this morning. We had him out early on. There was some value on this Knicks side because of that, but we have a recent sim that ran and put him back in.
I would guess that he's back. I mean, I think he could have played against the Hornets. I just think that the Knicks thought they didn't need him to get that win. I was in that camp too, and because the Hornets have been terrible, but they showed up. They wanted to break the Knicks' little win streak that they had going on. This night game, though, I'll be curious to see if a lot of people watch it. I am very interested because the Kings have been playing some awesome basketball, and so have the Knicks. I mean, this game's going to be really nice, and I like playing opposing point guards against this Kings team because De'Aaron Fox plays with so much pace. So this is going to be a game where maybe a couple pieces make sense, but honestly, it is a little tough too because both of these teams are healthy, and we have these spots where you have a lot of teams that a lot of people are resting or injury situations that are going to, get other guys, into our lineups. So, I mean, while I'm interested in watching the late game, talking it through actually in my mind real quick. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of plays from that game. That makes sense for tonight.
And it's an interesting situation with these guys too. Obviously, you've two teams that are just like surging right now. Guys on both sides of the ball here playing out of their minds. It's a situation where the salaries are adjusting for that. So a lot of these guys are rising in price over the last couple of weeks, playing some of these guys at probably like close to their max prices this season. Our sims are going to regress them back to the mean a little bit, right? Like we're projecting the Knicks not as like, what how many games in a row have they won? I think it was like 8 or 9 last time I checked, right? Julius Randle at 10,000 here. We've got him at 4.35 points per dollar at 43 projection here. So it's a guy you're not going to get in your lineups here unless you go out and intentionally bump that projection. So I think looking at one of the things that I like to do sometimes here is just look at like the top salary guys on the board here and see what that value looks like. And see if there's, a potential reason, especially if you're getting an ownership edge for bumping some of these guys, might be a guy that I look at, right? Like De'Aaron Fox does jump out on a slate where I think a lot of the chalk is going to be really good and really highly owned and hard to get off of. A way to get a little bit different might be to give a guy like De'Aaron Fox a projection bump. You could bump some other plays playing in that game as well. 5% owned. Give him a little boost here and assume that this game with the highest total on the night here goes off a little bit. And you get a guy playing in the late game here with a higher projection there. So something to look at there. I like especially, doing that. I like doing that with the higher salary guys, right? Because the upside's always going to be there. It's not, you don't have to squint too hard to see how De'Aaron Fox has an 85th or a 95th percentile outcome here. So I think if you're trying to get different on a slate, where the chalk seems pretty good and the guys are projected well, I like to do it with the studs, right? Like why play the chalk, the value chalk everybody's playing and the expensive chalk that everybody's playing? I'd prefer to get a little bit different with those expensive guys there. So even Curry, right? I know obviously still coming back off of the injury here, but
I like Curry tonight.
If we get that like playoff game environment in this game here tonight, which I think we could just based on kind of what's going on lately there, I could see that game ended up being pretty exciting and even like the other guys, the other Warriors not named Draymond Green kind of showing out there. So
yeah, and I mean Draymond, what he's going to do is he's going to be setting up his guys. He's going to be setting up Curry. He's going to be setting up Clay. So I like that call. Can you go to the first game real quick? The Hornets and Pistons. So this is a game like this is the type of game I was talking about on the slate where it's like okay, where on the surface it seems like there could be some plays here that get some ownership. Terry Rozier, he's been, I think, this is across the industry, not just Run Pure Sports or Sabersim. I think the industry's been too high on Terry Rozier's projection. I've been talking about this for a while. Now he actually, I mean, what's crazy, so the 41 projection there, he finally, against New York, finally got over 40. But outside of that, he's had a really bad year. He's been pretty terrible, and it's like he's never on the winner. He's always over-owned. And so he's a guy I always bump down. This game is one that I think I want to bump down. I think it could be kind of gross when you just look at it. And so like were we in that initial cash build that we ran, how much of that game were we getting?
Let me go look here. We'll update those projections, bump them down, and take a look.
Because it has to get some ownership. I mean, Terry Rozier had like if he's going to have a 40-some point projection, he's got to get. It's okay. 21%.
Actually, let's look at all of it here, the whole 500, because I think these are reflecting some of the projection changes I just made here. But yeah, so we're getting a little bit of Oubre here, Dennis Smith showing up a little bit, Rozier. I mean, definitely some Charlotte showing up here on the Detroit side. A couple names popping up here.
That's all you have to do is type into like the name of like the team, and I didn't know that. Learning a new thing every time we do the show.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we get people asking if they can like sort, like why are those games not up at the top here? That's actually something that we're adding in the future, so the games will show up even when you're looking at built lineups.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, but for now, you can just sort or search basically the team code that we have and it'll pull them up there. So yeah, a little bit of this game showing up. I think it's another situation, right? You mentioned it at the start of the show here, right? The value, the relative value of the late news that can break after makes me like this game even less, even if they're fine plays at lock, right? Just because people are going to tie up their lineups, they're going to take up salary and positional spots, and then if you get different Nets lineup than expected, or maybe you get like they're going to set Michael Bridges again at the last second, or you get that Giannis downgrade to questionable, or any of these different things. Jalen Brunson ends up sitting again. All these different things that can happen and open up more value later makes me like this game less. I probably feel the same way actually about the Magic and Utah game here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at that game also. That's a game that, I mean, Mo Wagner, I don't even know if we can go there. I mean, 20 minutes last game. Let me see the injury report real quick. Wendell Carter's already out. So, I mean, I guess I'm with you on that. I'm fine. Like, let's under project both. So Charlotte, Detroit, and then under project. I like doing this sometimes too, just like changing that real quick. And because here's why I think that's a fine way to adjust things quickly if you're crunch for time. If you get plays that still hit after you've made that adjustment, it's quite possible that means that play was a good play, and so I'm fine if I get some exposure to them versus like completely just taking them out of the pool. The other thing that I want to do, and then let's rerun this, go to Houston, bump up Jalen Green just a little bit, and Şengün, and then Tari Eason, and that's it from that. Yeah, and then Halliburton on the Pacers side, just because he's been a beast. The matchup is just awesome.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember, the reason why we're doing this, right, is to increase the flexibility that we have to late swap these lineups to react to news, right? So it's more about like getting a little bit less players playing in these games and then making sure that you're around and ready to swap when we're getting the starting lineups for some of these later games. So it's like the good part of it there.
Did you adjust the Warriors guys at all? Like Curry? I think Curry.
Yeah, we gave Curry a little boost. I mean, we can give him a little more there just to make sure we're getting a little bit of him.
Closer to that 75th percentile, I think would be good. And then I like the De'Aaron Fox call too.
Yeah, we got Fox there. We'll
perfect. Yeah,
percentile there as well. Cool. Want to run it?
Yeah, use that 20 max setting. I've been using that lately for the $4 and then the 15.
Yeah, and this is just going to be a nice balanced settings to use. I know like a lot of times people are running a build to fill multiple contests at once. NBA, you don't always have time to split everything up and do your single entries and do your 150 max and things like that. I love that 20 max 10 to 50K. If you're in a pinch, if you got a late starting lineup, you need to rebuild everything at once. I like using these as kind of a nice middle ground here. So
just to answer this question from Yeezy, I would not play any of those kind of punt values from the Pistons or the Hornets. I would prioritize the Nets situation for sure. I mean, you're playing Day'Ron Sharpe, Cam Thomas, Edmund Sumner over a guy like that Pistons value. Eugene, I believe.
So we got our build up here, and I think what jumps out to me immediately here is getting some of the same value pieces here, right? They're great plays. Grizzlies, Nets value. It's popping here, but we're starting to mix in some of those other guys here that we've identified based on our adjustments here, right? Steph Curry actually popping in quite a few lineups here now at that 75th percentile projection. Tyrese Halliburton showing up here a little bit. We gave bumps to Desmond Bane as well, who's showing up here a little bit. I'm not seeing, and I'm kind of interested that I'm not seeing, still no De'Aaron Fox showing up here. And you know what I think some of that actually is having to do with that? The value that we're getting tonight is often at guard. So
Sumner,
you're going to really have to bump him if you want to get some of him in your pool. I mean, if we took him up, let's see, 52 here. Okay, so there does seem to be a certain point here around that like 50-point projection, which we have as his like 75th, 80th percentile, where he starts to show up. It starts to be worth it to play him over some of those value pieces in there. I think it's still an interesting idea. I think, bumping up Fox at lock also then make sure that you have a guard spot open and a lot of salary still left over that you can use to pivot if you need based on a starting lineup that might change. But it's interesting. I mean, you are going to be sacrificing, one of these other cheap guards here to get him into a lineup. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to say, is there any Curry and Fox builds? Because we talked about might be tough. Like, so the other thing too is if there isn't, or if there's very few of them, it means that it's likely that's going to be a pretty contrarian route tonight because you're forced to. I kind of like that build right there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like Dante DiVincenzo that much. With let me pull him up real quick. My problem with him is, you need. Gosh, the one thing about the Warriors right now is they got so many dudes, and where Curry can still be the guy that can thrive. That's kind of why I like him. But as far as like Dante, Draymond, Clay, like Clay is all scoring, and so it's tough to play him now with Curry back because Curry scores and can do, can rack up he can do it all. So. And Dante, it's just him and Draymond take away from each other too, just with their playmaking. So it's kind of tough, but that's where I was looking at that. That's where like a Tari Eason could be kind of interesting tonight. And no one's like off the bench 5-6. No one's gonna. Those are the plays that I think are kind of intriguing in like a large field tournament because like I just don't see how he gets a lot of ownership, but I could be wrong on that too.
Yeah, and maybe a good opportunity, right? If you're looking at a lineup here and want to swap out one name to use the lineup editor, I think sometimes this tool gets slept on here. So go in, we can pop DiVincenzo out if we want here, throw Tari Eason in. Maybe you take out KJ Martin as well then if you want to. These guys might be a little negatively correlated here. I was curious. So a little bit of a negative correlation there. So something we could look at, maybe replacing two players from this lineup. But I love, especially if you're playing 20 or less lineups, using these filters and trying to identify a construction that's going to be uncommon, which I definitely think is going to be the case with Fox and Curry. And then, doctoring the lineups a little bit with the editor to make them something that you want to put in your pool. So.
Yeah, I like that. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I'm missing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hang on. I wanted to take a look here at some of these top salary guys. So another thing that I might go back and look at a little bit closer is just taking a look at some of the other guys playing in this late game here. Randall and Sabonis. Sabonis is projected pretty well here. Surprised he's not showing up at all. I think I might see like what is the projection where you need to get some Randall popping into this build here. What does it take? Because again, I think it's an interesting situation where people are the chalk is going to be very heavily owned tonight. I think the common constructions are going to be very common, and it seems like the ownership projections are saying people are going to be ignoring this last game of the night with the highest total out there. And I think one, because it gives you late swap flexibility to swap throughout the slate if we do get different news, and two, just because it seems like a good game to target. It makes me interested in that game a little bit there.
Yeah, I'm with you. The more I look at it, so just kind of, it's early. I'll be on the Up to Lock show tonight too, so the members, you'll get my final thoughts. But early on, like right now, if I had to build my lineups and lock things in with the news that we have, which obviously we're still waiting on a lot of news, I think I would come close to like locking Cam Thomas for sure, Edmund Sumner pretty close, and then Day'Ron Sharpe. Because if Giannis plays, they're gonna. Nerlens Noel's like he's not even gonna play 20 minutes tonight. Like we haven't seen him play 20 minutes all season. He could probably play 17. All those other minutes you would think, go to Day'Ron Sharpe. Those three plays feel very good. And then the other thing is like, and I'd be tempted to do this in like a 20 max, but Jalen Green looks like a really good play. You could play him against Halliburton. And then it's, you're using up a lot of roster spots right there. But I would look at that and see what those builds look like. And then off the top of my head, like what Memphis pieces come in. Are we getting any Curry or anything like that? That's kind of where I'm at right now. What do those builds look like?
I was going to run one here. I'm going to lock all 5 of those guys in just because I want to see like what some of the constructions look like here. Now I think it's going to box you out of a little bit of some of these guys like Fox and Curry, because we're using up some of the guard spots here. But there are some lower ownership forwards and centers here. I mean, we just mentioned, I think the idea of, go ahead.
One of my thinking back through like the Knicks situation in Kings, both these teams are good. They're trending in the right direction.
Right.
That total seems a little high. Like I could see it playing to the under because when you get two good teams that are trending in the right direction, Tibbs, he always likes, play hard defense and stuff. Maybe that game plays a little bit more defensive and maybe we just fade it. I love the Halliburton, Jalen Green. Yeah, that is an interesting combo. And then this is interesting because the Jaren Jackson play at forward, it's kind of interesting. Like if you look at, I wish I had the heat map done. I don't right now, but one thing I like to look at is where are kind of when you like, I designed it like I'm trying to show where the best plays are and, where kind of the industry's at with the core play tags. It's often at the guard spot or, the front court position, like centers and power, like where you're usually not seeing some of the best plays is the small forward, power forward. And we often like punt at those spots where, if you don't have that obvious value, sometimes it makes sense. Like, how could Jaren Jackson be on the optimal lineup? Well, maybe Giannis fails. And if you're not, we're going to have plenty of salary to pay for Giannis. And if he fails or underwhelms, maybe we get enough from Jaren Jackson to be on that optimal lineup. So it does feel like a slate where that could make a lot of sense tonight. If you're going this route where you're playing the Nets punt script with Daron Sharp, Cam Thomas, and Edmund Sumner.
Yeah, what's interesting to me too as well, like we bumped down Giannis here a little bit before this build. He's only at 4.29 value here, showing up in 35% of the top 20 lineups here, even at that lower projection. So I think these locks do kind of funnel you into that build path a little bit just because it's going to vacate so much salary for you. You definitely have the 11-9 in a lot of these lineups to pay for Giannis. So makes me feel actually a little bit better about including him in lineups here and just keeping an eye on potentially an injury status there.
I like that. The other thing I would do is I would give Lauri Markkanen maybe a little bit of a bump. If you think of Orlando, I mean, Lauri loves to, takes a lot of threes, a lot of mid-range shots, and Orlando still young team. They leave a lot of shooters open. It could be a decent spot for Lauri. I hate playing Lauri because he just seems like he's always overpriced and rarely does he actually pay off that tag. But again, it's a slate by slate type of thing. If we're lacking spend up options outside of Giannis at the small forward, power forward position, that's when your Jaren Jacksons, your Lauris can come into play, especially in larger field type of stuff. So I would also look at Lauri just to see if we were getting any of him. What do the Lauri lineups look like?
Let's see. Let's take a look here. So we've got five other locks here. So going to be those 5 guys. But
yeah. Okay.
Also,
duh.
But pretty spread out apart from that, right? I mean, getting exposure to a bunch of different guys here, are a lot of different games as well here. So Draymond showing up, Terry Eason, guys that we bumped here, a little bit of Charlotte. And I mean, we're still getting some of those early games showing up here as well. So something to look back at here if we wanted to go with a more aggressive fade of those games, but pretty spread out compared to the core we've established here.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can wrap this up, leave it with that. But I mean, the main things, my takeaways for tonight, and how to, when you're planning for this slate, keep an eye on, there's a few key things. All right. So half of the slate starts at 7 Eastern. The other games start at 7:30, 8, and then 10 tonight, obviously the last game. The Jalen Brunson, I mean, he has missed the last 2 games. So leaving a spot open is interesting because Quickly would become a much better play. You can't play him if Brunson's in because he's 6'6", but if he gets ruled out, I mean, we saw against Boston the type of upside that Quickly has. Also, RJ Barrett would become a better play, Josh Hart as well. So another slate where it could be beneficial to wait, but the risk tonight is it's an island game. If the news doesn't fall your way, you're kind of stuck with wherever you're at. So that's kind of the risk that you have to analyze. You got any other anything new, anything up and coming over at Sabersim that the people should be aware of?
Yeah, gearing up for baseball for sure. We've got the models team getting us ready for the start of baseball season here. That I think is kind of our big priority. Again, I mentioned we are working on some updates to the app overall that should just make things easier to use. It'll come with a bunch of like quality of life kind of fixes that people, not even fixes, just things that people have been asking for a while. I mentioned being able to see those games when you're building lineups, a couple things like that. So I know as well, we did in our Sabersim Discord, we have a sim alerts channel that lets people know when sims are running for games here. It now, as of yesterday, 1 hour before the start of each game tipping off, it'll actually show you the changes in projections to players that happen in those sims. So it can be really useful. You know, let's say we do get a little bit of a starting lineup that's different for the Nets, and you're wondering, hey, how much does this change the projections? The sims that go off in that channel will now say, Cam Thomas minus 4 points, or Seth Curry plus 4 points, or things like that. So if you're already in the RPS Discord, you've got access to ours as well if you have Sabersim. So you can join our Discord. I'll drop a link to our Discord channel in the RPS channel here after this so people have it. Just ping me or somebody else in the channel you have access to when you first join. Say, hey, I'm from Run Pure here. We'll get you hooked up, and you can see those sims running there. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it's good to understand, too, kind of what's going on and how the adjustments work in projections. So really good stuff. So, over at Run Pure Sports, again, if you haven't yet, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. It helps us out a lot. If you want to sign up, test us out, AP15 will get you 15% off your membership. That does include Sabersim as well. With that, Jordan, we got a fun slate tonight. Make sure to catch the Hardwood Show this afternoon, and then JSU, myself, and Holden will be taking you up to lock. We'll leave it at that. I'm AP. That's Jordan. Run Pure.